and the Kahlers, Rob and Vicky, they're so kind. They said, hey, here's a book that we've heard recommended, or that we recommend it. Here's a book. I love getting good books that are recommended. So they handed it to me, and I took it on the flight. It was a late flight, got in at 11 p.m. out there, but I had about 3.5 hours. I'm just sitting there, I read it start to finish in those hours. It's called The Honeybee Bus Story. It's Meredith May. It's her story. This young girl grows up in Boston. Well, grew up in Boston as a little girl. One night, her parents had been fighting for months now. One night, they were throwing stuff at each other and yelling. She goes to bed and hides under something in her room. And in the middle of the night, her mom bursts into her room, wakes her up and says, get ready, let's go, we're out of here. And she wakes up, Mom's saying, let's go. No, we don't have time for it. So she said, please, can I take my stuffy, a little stuffed animal she sleeps with? And Mom says, okay, just grab. She grabs it, and she's taken out of her room, put in the back of a car, taken to the airport, and they fly to California. Last she saw of her dad as she got on that plane was him at the gate, when you get to the gate. He drove him to the airport. Waved him goodbye. That was her dad. Dad, why aren't you going with us? What is going on? Her parents split. Her mom went into deep, deep depression, becomes an invalid, stays in bed all day and all night, just smoking like a chimney. Doesn't get out of bed. Her grandparents, Meredith's grandparents, now begin to take care of her and her younger brother. She's confused at what just happened to her life. Her dad was ripped away from her. Her mother won't let her come into their room, and everything she knew, she lost. I'm just emotionally engaged in this story as we cross the country. But through it, her grandfather, who raised bees, made honey, shared it around the valley there in California. He begins to take her along, and she watches hours and hours a day watching these bees and learning their behaviors. She learns that they form a family that looks out for each other and that they serve each other. Some bees go out and they find flowers, and they come back and they do the dances so the other bees know where to go. And some bees never leave the hive. Their job is just to care for the queen. And the bees that go out come back and share their nutrients with the bees that have never left and didn't do any of the hard work of flying around and following. But it forms a family, a self-sacrificing, cohesive family where everybody is doing the work. And she begins to learn what it could really mean to be a family. She says, the bees gave me hope. I'm sitting there on the plane, and I'm beginning to pray, God, could it be that in a world that has been torn apart, hurting, that they would find not a beehive, but the church, and they would see the members working and sharing and self-sacrificing and proclaiming the gospel of Jesus, protecting the Queen, the King of Kings, and they would be drawn into that. And even though their life is nothing but rubbish and rubble, they look at this and say, we have hope because there's a church. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, God, I wonder if are there really people out there that are hurting? Like, are they everywhere? Because a lot of people seem pretty normal. I looked at the guy next to me. He seemed normal. He was a cautious flyer. And I have no problem taking caution. I often fly with a mask. He had a mask on. It covered everything, just a little bit of his eyes and then a face shield. He was being cautious, and I have no problem with that. But he was just very quiet and solemn the entire time. And as we land at Baltimore, and we begin to move around to collect our belongings, the flight attendant comes by, and she looks down at the man that's been next to me, and she says, I hope your dad's okay. I turned to him. I said, what's up with is your dad okay? He said, I hope I make it in time to see him alive. And he becomes choked up. I've just read this book about a little girl that grows up having to learn about community and love from bees. I start choking up, and I put my hand on his shoulder. I I said, I hope he's okay. I hope you make it. And he nods, and off we go. I take a seat in the terminal, and I just bow my head, pray for this nameless man racing to try to see his dad one more time. And then heaven whispers to me, see, they're all around you. They're hurting. They're hurting. You may have thought for 3.5 hours you sat next to this man and you thought he was just fine, but he's hurting. And the person next to you and the person that moved in next door to you on Sycamore Street, they're hurting too. They look normal. They are hurting. And the person and the people, they're hurting.